So, you think Tanzania is just about safari animals and Mount Kilimanjaro? Well, wait until you find out about the tribe that drinks cow blood for breakfast, the country where pointing is illegal, and the place where dead bodies are left for hyenas to eat. You won't believe what happens next. Number 15. Tanzania has over 120 different ethnic groups speaking more than 100 languages, making it more diverse than most of Europe combined. You heard right. This single African country contains more linguistic diversity than the entire European continent. While tourists focus on English and Swahili, the reality is that stepping into rural Tanzania means entering a babel of ancient tongues that have survived for millennia. From the clicking sounds of the Hadza hunter-gatherers to the tonal complexities of Bantu languages, each tribe maintains its own complete worldview through language. The Sukuma people alone number over 5 million speakers, making their language bigger than Norwegian or Danish. Imagine trying to be a census taker here. You'd need 100 different translators just to count heads. What's fascinating is that many Tanzanians speak 4 to 5 languages fluently by adulthood, switching seamlessly between their tribal tongue, Swahili for business, English for education, and neighboring tribal languages for trade. This makes the average Tanzanian village more linguistically sophisticated than most American cities. The government actually struggles to print official documents because there aren't enough speakers of some languages to make translation worthwhile. Some languages have fewer than 1,000 speakers left, preserved only in the memories of elderly villagers who guard them like precious secrets. Number 14. In Maasai culture, pointing with your finger is considered one of the most offensive gestures possible, worse than swearing in Western culture. Think pointing is harmless? Think again. Among the Maasai people, who make up a significant portion of northern Tanzania, using your index finger to point at someone is essentially cursing them with bad luck or even death. Instead, they point with their lips, a subtle puckering motion that directs attention without the aggressive energy of finger pointing. You heard right. An entire culture communicates direction through mouth movements that would look like air kisses to confused tourists. The taboo runs so deep that Maasai children are taught from infancy never to point, even at objects. If a Maasai elder catches you pointing at them, they might immediately turn away and refuse to interact further, believing you've brought misfortune upon them. This creates hilarious and awkward situations when Western tourists try to ask for directions. Picture this: a lost American frantically pointing at their map while confused Maasai locals back away in horror, thinking they're being cursed. The alternative lip pointing takes practice. It's like learning to whistle but for navigation. Even more bizarre, the Maasai believe that pointing at livestock can cause the animals to fall ill or die, so their entire relationship with their most precious possessions is mediated through lip gestures and head nods. Number 13. Traditional Maasai warriors drink fresh cow blood mixed with milk as their primary source of nutrition, consuming up to 2 liters daily. Sounds unbelievable, but this blood and milk cocktail is the cornerstone of Maasai nutrition and has been for over 1,000 years. The process involves making a small puncture in a cow's neck vein, using a sharp arrow, collecting the blood in a gourd, then mixing it with fresh milk while it's still warm. The mixture looks like a strawberry milkshake but tastes metallic and rich, providing complete proteins, iron, and calories needed for their nomadic lifestyle. Here's the scary part. The cows survive this process and can be milked for blood multiple times per month without harm. Maasai warriors can identify the nutritional quality of blood by its color and consistency, preferring the deep red blood from well-fed cattle over the thin, pale blood from malnourished animals. During dry seasons when food is scarce, this blood-milk combination keeps entire families alive when crops fail and meat becomes too precious to slaughter. The preparation is ritualistic. Only certain age groups can collect blood, specific prayers must be said, and the mixture must be consumed fresh, never stored overnight. Western nutritionists have studied this diet and found it provides optimal nutrition for high-activity lifestyles, containing more protein per ounce than most Western protein shakes. The irony? Many Maasai who move to cities and adopt Western diets become malnourished, losing the robust health their traditional blood diet provided. Number 12. Tanzania is home to the world's only purple-blue gemstone, tanzanite, which is 1,000 times rarer than diamonds and found in just one tiny area. Wait until you find out that this country holds a monopoly on one of the world's most valuable gemstones found only in a 4 square kilometer area near Mount Kilimanjaro. Tanzanite's blue-purple color changes depending on the angle you view it from, creating an optical illusion that makes the stone appear to shift from deep blue to violet purple as you turn it. The geological conditions that created Tanzanite were so specific and rare that scientists estimate the chances of finding similar deposits elsewhere on Earth are virtually zero. Here's the crazy part. The entire world's supply of this gemstone comes from an area smaller than Manhattan's Central Park. Local Maasai herders first discovered the stones in 1967 after a lightning strike exposed them on the surface, thinking they were just pretty blue rocks. Tiffany and company immediately recognized their value and convinced them to mine the deposits. The stones form only under extremely rare conditions, requiring specific heat, pressure, and mineral combinations that occurred just once in geological history. Current estimates suggest all Tanzanite deposits will be completely mined out within 20 to 25 years, making existing stones increasingly valuable. A single high-quality Tanzanite can sell for $1,000 per carat, and the largest specimens found weigh over 16,000 carats. The mining area is so small that you could walk across the entire global Tanzanite reserve in less than an hour. Number 11. The Hadza tribe still lives as hunter-gatherers exactly like humans did 10,000 years ago, with no chiefs, no calendar, and no concept of ownership. You heard right. In modern Tanzania, there's a group of people living precisely as our Stone Age ancestors did, completely unchanged by civilization. The Hadza, numbering fewer than 1,000 people, have no permanent settlements, no agriculture, no domesticated animals, and no possessions beyond what they can carry. They have no word for work in their language because survival activities like hunting and gathering are considered natural life activities, not labor. Their society has no hierarchy, no chiefs, no elders with authority, no leaders making decisions for others. Every person is completely equal, and group decisions are made through casual conversation until consensus emerges naturally. They don't count days, months, or years, living entirely in the present moment without calendars, schedules, or future planning. The Hadza language contains no words for numbers beyond 3. Everything beyond that is simply many. They sleep under the stars or in temporary grass shelters, moving camp every few days when local resources are exhausted. What's fascinating is their complete lack of material accumulation. They own nothing, share everything, and consider the concept of personal property completely foreign. Anthropologists study them as a living window into how humans lived for 95% of our species' existence. The Hadza have no stress-related diseases, no depression, no anxiety disorders, and no conflicts over resources. Their children learn survival skills through play, becoming expert trackers and foragers by age 10 without any formal education. Number 10. Tanzania's traditional funeral practices include leaving dead bodies in the wilderness for hyenas and vultures to consume, believing burial harms the earth. Think death rituals are universal? Think again. Among many traditional Tanzanian tribes, including the Maasai, the dead are not buried or cremated but left exposed in designated areas for wild animals to consume naturally. This practice, called sky burial or natural disposal, reflects a deep spiritual belief that decomposing bodies poison the earth and that returning flesh to the animal kingdom completes the natural cycle of life. The process involves media, close-up of hands wrapping a body in animal skins, procession carrying wrapped figure through rural landscape, designated death grounds in Tanzania, wrapping the deceased in animal skins, carrying them to remote locations known as death grounds, and positioning them to face specific directions based on their social status and spiritual beliefs. Within 24 to 48 hours, hyenas, vultures, and other scavengers completely consume the remains, leaving only bones that gradually weather into the soil. Here's the intense part. Family members return periodically to collect certain bones for spiritual ceremonies, believing the deceased spirit inhabits these remains. Only great chiefs and spiritual leaders receive traditional burial, as their bodies are considered too spiritually powerful for animals to handle safely. The practice horrifies Western visitors, but makes perfect ecological sense. It prevents disease, conserves land, and feeds wildlife during drought seasons when natural prey is scarce. Modern Tanzanian law requires official death certificates and burial permits, creating conflicts between traditional practices and government regulations. Many rural families still practice natural disposal secretly, risking legal penalties to honor their ancestors' customs. The efficiency is remarkable. A complete human body disappears within 48 hours, leaving no trace except scattered bones that blend into the landscape. Number 9. Over 60% of Tanzania's population lacks access to electricity, but the country generates enough power from hydroelectric dams to supply neighboring countries. Sounds unbelievable, but Tanzania simultaneously exports electricity while keeping its own citizens in darkness. A perfect example of how resource distribution can be completely backwards. The country's massive hydroelectric projects along the Rufiji River generate over 2,000 megawatts of power, enough to illuminate every village and city, yet most rural areas remain without basic electrical infrastructure. The government prioritizes selling power to Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda for foreign currency, over connecting domestic communities to the grid. Picture this paradox. Tanzanian villages sit in darkness, while their exported electricity powers shopping malls and factories in neighboring countries. The cost of connecting rural areas to the national grid ranges from $500 to $2,000 per household, money the government claims it doesn't have, while simultaneously earning millions from power exports. Many Tanzanians use kerosene lamps, candles, and wood fires for lighting, spending more monthly on these alternatives than electricity would cost if available. The health consequences are severe. Indoor air pollution from kerosene and wood smoke causes respiratory diseases, while lack of refrigeration leads to food spoilage and waterborne illnesses. Children study by candlelight or not at all after sunset, limiting educational opportunities and perpetuating poverty cycles. Even more frustrating, many rural Tanzanians can see electrical transmission lines carrying their country's power overhead to neighboring nations, while their own homes remain dark. The irony is that Tanzania possesses enough renewable energy potential from hydroelectric, solar, and wind sources to become a regional power superpower, but infrastructure investment remains focused on export profits rather than domestic development. Number 8. In some Tanzanian tribes, women must build their own houses entirely by hand, including cutting trees, making bricks, and constructing roofs, while men are forbidden from helping. Wait until you find out about the ultimate female empowerment tradition that would shock Western feminists and traditionalists alike. Among the Chaga and several other Tanzanian ethnic groups, house construction is exclusively women's work, considered so fundamentally feminine that men who assist are ridiculed and sometimes ostracized from their communities. These aren't simple huts. Women construct complex multi-room homes using traditional techniques passed down through generations, including mixing clay and cow dung for mortar, cutting and shaping wooden beams, weaving grass roofs, and creating intricate decorative patterns on walls. The process takes 3 to 6 months of daily work, during which women organize into cooperative groups, sharing labor and expertise while men handle livestock and farming duties. Here's the fascinating part. Women take immense pride in their construction skills, competing to build the most beautiful and functional homes, with architectural expertise determining social status among wives. Each woman's house becomes her personal domain where she makes all decisions about decoration, layout, and usage. Even her husband must ask permission to make changes. The tradition stems from ancient beliefs that women possess special spiritual connections to earth and shelter, making them naturally suited for creating sacred living spaces. Modern building materials like concrete and corrugated metal are gradually replacing traditional methods, but many communities resist change, viewing modern construction as spiritually inferior to women's traditional techniques. The physical demands are enormous. Women routinely lift 50-pound mud bricks, climb on roofs while pregnant, and work 10-hour days in intense heat, developing incredible strength and endurance. Ironically, this tradition produces some of Africa's most architecturally skilled women, yet remains invisible to outsiders who assume African women lack technical capabilities. Number 7. Tanzania operates a government-sanctioned witch doctor licensing system, with over 75,000 registered traditional healers legally practicing medicine. You heard right. While Western countries debate alternative medicine, Tanzania has fully integrated witchcraft into its official healthcare system through comprehensive licensing and regulation programs. Traditional healers, known locally as waganga, must complete formal training, pass government examinations, and maintain licenses to practice legally, making them essentially medical doctors specializing in spiritual healing. The licensing process includes studying anatomy, disease symptoms, herbal pharmacology, and ethical guidelines, transforming ancient mystical practices into regulated healthcare professions. These practitioners treat everything from malaria and tuberculosis to mental illness and infertility, using combinations of plant medicines, spiritual rituals, and psychological counseling that often achieve, honestly, remarkable results. Here's the mind-blowing part. Many licensed witch doctors work directly with hospitals and clinics, referring patients to modern doctors for serious conditions while handling cases involving spiritual or psychological components of illness. The government recognizes that 80% of Tanzanians consult traditional healers before or instead of visiting modern medical facilities, making regulation essential for public health and safety. Licensed healers must maintain detailed patient records, report certain diseases to health authorities, and avoid treating conditions beyond their expertise, essentially functioning as specialized medical practitioners within the official healthcare system. The training programs include modules on recognizing symptoms requiring modern medical intervention, preventing dangerous drug interactions between traditional and Western medicines, and maintaining sanitary treatment conditions. Some traditional healers earn more money than certified doctors, particularly those specializing in psychiatric conditions, fertility treatments, and chronic pain management where Western medicine has limited effectiveness. The system creates a fascinating hybrid healthcare model where patients might receive antibiotics from a hospital in the morning and spiritual cleansing from a licensed witch doctor in the afternoon, with both treatments officially recognized and documented. Number 6. Single women in Tanzania face a bachelor tax in some regions, where unmarried women over 25 must pay additional fees for business licenses and government services. Think gender discrimination is limited to historical practices? Think again. In several Tanzanian municipalities, unmarried women encounter systematic financial penalties disguised as administrative fees, creating economic pressure to marry regardless of personal preference or circumstances. The practice varies by region but typically involves extra charges for business registration, property ownership, market stall licenses, and even healthcare services, with costs ranging from $50 to $500 annually, significant amounts in a country where average income is under $1,000 per year. Local officials justify these fees by claiming single women place greater burdens on social services and represent incomplete family units that require additional government oversight and support. Here's the infuriating part. Single men face no equivalent penalties, and married women pay standard rates even if they're separated or widowed, revealing the purely discriminatory nature of these policies. The fees effectively force women into early marriages or economic dependency, particularly in rural areas where alternative income sources are limited and family pressure to marry is intense. Many educated women migrate to Dar es Salaam or other major cities specifically to escape these financial penalties, contributing to urban brain drain and rural economic stagnation. The system creates perverse incentives where women enter marriages primarily for economic relief rather than love or compatibility, leading to higher divorce rates and domestic violence incidents. Women's rights organizations have challenged these policies in court, but enforcement varies widely, and many rural officials continue collecting fees informally through corruption and intimidation. International development organizations working in Tanzania often encounter these fees when hiring local women, sometimes paying the penalties themselves to enable female employment. The practice represents a modern form of economic coercion that forces life decisions through financial manipulation rather than legal requirements, making it particularly difficult to challenge or eliminate. Number 5. Tanzania's Lake Natron literally turns animals into stone statues through natural mummification, creating a graveyard of perfectly preserved flamingos, bats, and birds. Sounds like something from a horror movie, but this alkaline lake in northern Tanzania possesses water so caustic that it instantly calcifies any animal that dies in its waters, creating haunting sculptures that look like stone artwork, but are actually mummified creatures. The lake's pH level reaches 10.5, almost as alkaline as ammonia, due to volcanic ash deposits from the nearby Old Doinyo Lengai volcano, combined with extremely high salt concentrations that create a deadly chemical soup. The water temperature reaches 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, hot enough to cause severe burns to human skin within minutes, yet millions of flamingos use this hellish environment as their primary breeding ground in East Africa. Here's the terrifying beauty. When animals die in Lake Natron, the alkaline water immediately begins preserving their bodies through calcification, coating feathers, fur, and flesh with mineral deposits that harden into stone-like shells while maintaining perfect anatomical detail. Photographer Nick Brandt discovered hundreds of these natural sculptures along the shoreline: flamingos frozen mid-flight, bats with wings spread, small birds in lifelike poses that look like art installations but are actually chemical mummies. The lake's blood-red color comes from salt-loving microorganisms called halophiles, creating an alien landscape that looks like Mars rather than Earth, with crystallized animal statues scattered across colored mineral flats that extend for miles. The flamingos that survive this environment have developed specialized adaptations, including reinforced leg scales and filtering systems in their beaks that allow them to drink the caustic water and eat the algae that thrives in these impossible conditions. The alkaline environment is so extreme that it can dissolve bones and metal within weeks, yet also preserves soft tissues indefinitely through mineral replacement, creating a natural laboratory for studying preservation chemistry. Visitors must wear protective gear and can only approach the lake's edge for minutes before the caustic air burns their respiratory systems, making it one of Earth's most beautiful yet deadly natural phenomena. Number 4. The Maasai practice wife inheritance, where widows automatically become the property of their deceased husband's male relatives, with no legal right to refuse or own property independently. Wait until you find out about a practice that makes arranged marriage look progressive by comparison. In traditional Maasai society, which comprises significant portions of northern Tanzania, women become inherited property passed between male relatives like livestock or land, with widows having absolutely no say in their reassignment to new husbands. When a Maasai man dies, his wives, children, and cattle become the automatic inheritance of his brothers or adult sons from other wives, based on family hierarchy and negotiations that exclude the women entirely from decision-making. The practice stems from ancient beliefs that women cannot survive independently and require male protection and economic support, but in reality creates a system of legalized sexual slavery where widows become domestic and reproductive servants in households they never chose. Here's the devastating part. Widows who resist inheritance face media, Maasai widow sitting alone outside hut, Maasai woman separated from group, Maasai woman with solemn expression, complete social ostracism, loss of access to their children, and exile from their communities with no economic resources or family support, essentially forcing compliance through survival necessity. The inheriting male gains complete authority over the widow's daily activities, reproductive choices, and any income she generates, while she loses all connection to her deceased husband's property, including homes she built and cattle she helped raise. Modern Tanzanian law theoretically protects women's inheritance rights, but rural Maasai communities operate under traditional authority systems that ignore national legislation, leaving women with legal rights they cannot practically exercise. The psychological trauma is immense. Women must immediately adapt to new husbands, often men they dislike or who already have multiple wives, while grieving their original partners and adjusting to entirely different household dynamics and expectations. Some progressive Maasai leaders are challenging these practices, but change occurs slowly due to deep cultural beliefs about gender roles and property ownership that define masculine identity through control over women and livestock. International human rights organizations working in Tanzania identify wife inheritance as one of the most persistent forms of gender-based violence, yet intervention is complicated by cultural sensitivity concerns and the practice's integration into economic and social survival systems. Number 3. Tanzania harbors the Ngorongoro crater, a 2-million-year-old volcanic caldera that functions as a natural prison holding 30,000 wild animals who cannot escape its 2,000-foot walls. Think zoos are artificial? Think again. Nature created the world's largest natural zoo in Tanzania, where an ancient volcanic collapse formed a 100-square-mile crater with walls so steep and high that large animals cannot climb out, creating a completely enclosed ecosystem that has evolved in isolation for millennia. The crater floor sits 2,000 feet below the rim, accessible only through a few narrow passages that most animals cannot navigate, trapping everything from elephants and lions to hippos and flamingos in what scientists call a natural amphitheater of wildlife. Here's the mind-blowing part. This geological prison contains the highest concentration of large mammals anywhere on Earth, with over 30,000 animals living in an area smaller than London, creating predator-prey relationships and territorial behaviors completely different from anywhere else in Africa. The isolation has created unique evolutionary adaptations. The crater's lions have developed distinctive black manes, the elephants are unusually large with massive tusks, and several bird species exist nowhere else on Earth, all because they've been breeding in this enclosed environment for thousands of generations. The crater operates like a massive outdoor laboratory where scientists can study complete ecosystem dynamics without external interference, observing how isolated populations adapt, compete, and survive in limited space with finite resources. During dry seasons, the crater becomes incredibly crowded as animals compete for the permanent water sources and limited grazing areas, creating intense wildlife viewing experiences where visitors can see dozens of species within minutes. The walls contain the animals so effectively that even during migrations, most crater residents remain trapped inside while their cousins roam freely across the Serengeti Plains just miles away, creating two completely different populations of the same species separated by geological barriers. The volcanic soil is incredibly fertile, supporting lush grasslands that can sustain this abnormally high animal density, but also creating carrying capacity limits that force constant territorial battles and natural population control through starvation and predation. Some animals have learned to use the few exit routes, but most remain lifelong prisoners in this natural paradise that simultaneously provides perfect habitat and absolute confinement. Number 2. Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro creates its own weather system and can experience all 4 seasons in a single day, from tropical heat to Arctic blizzards. Sounds impossible, but Africa's highest mountain operates as a massive weather machine that generates completely independent climate zones, allowing climbers to experience every possible weather condition on Earth within 24 hours. The mountain's 19,341-foot height and massive base create such powerful atmospheric effects that it literally manufactures its own clouds, rain, snow, and wind patterns, regardless of surrounding regional weather. Starting at the base in tropical temperatures of 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity levels typical of African savannas, climbers ascend through distinct climate zones that replicate traveling from the equator to the Arctic Circle in just a few days. Here's the incredible part. The mountain contains 5 completely different ecosystems stacked vertically: tropical rainforest, temperate forest, alpine desert, Arctic tundra, and polar ice cap, each with unique plants, animals, and weather patterns that exist nowhere else in Africa. The summit experiences Arctic conditions year-round, with temperatures dropping to -20 degrees Fahrenheit and blizzard conditions that can bury climbers in snow within hours, while the base remains perpetually tropical with elephants and zebras grazing in 90-degree heat just 30 miles away. The mountain's massive bulk intercepts moisture-laden air currents from the Indian Ocean, forcing them upward where they cool and condense into clouds that dump rainfall on the lower slopes, while leaving the upper reaches in perpetual drought conditions. Weather changes occur so rapidly that climbers can experience tropical thunderstorms, temperate drizzle, desert sandstorms, alpine hail, and Arctic blizzards all in the same day, requiring complete wardrobe changes every few hours to survive the temperature variations. The mountain creates its own wind patterns, generating powerful updrafts during the day that can lift small aircraft and downdrafts at night that freeze exposed skin within minutes, making weather prediction impossible beyond a few hours. Kilimanjaro's 3 volcanic peaks each create different microclimates. Mwenzi generates violent windstorms, Shira creates its own cloud forest, and Kibo produces the glacial ice fields that shouldn't exist at this latitude but persist due to the mountain's unique atmospheric effects. Number 1. Tanzania is literally splitting apart along the East African Rift Valley, and in about 10 million years, it will become 2 separate countries divided by a brand new ocean. You heard right, you're looking at a continent in the process of breaking apart, with Tanzania positioned directly on one of the most geologically active zones on Earth, where the African continent is literally tearing itself in half. The East African Rift Valley runs straight through Tanzania, creating a massive crack in the Earth's crust that grows wider by about 2 to 5 millimeters every year, as tectonic forces pull the land apart with unstoppable geological power. This isn't some distant future possibility, it's happening right now, as evidenced by the constant earthquakes, volcanic activity, and the formation of new lakes and valleys that appear regularly throughout the region. Here's the mind-blowing reality. Scientists can measure the continental separation using GPS satellites, watching in real time as eastern Tanzania slowly moves away from the western part of the country at a rate faster than fingernails grow. The rift process has already created some of the world's most famous geographical features. Lake Tanganyika, Lake Malawi, and the Ngorongoro crater are all products of this continental breakup, representing the early stages of ocean formation. In approximately 10 million years, the rift will widen enough for ocean water to flood inland, creating a new sea that will separate what is currently Tanzania into two different landmasses on opposite shores of an African Mediterranean. You know, the geological forces involved are so massive that they're creating new mountains, volcanoes, and valleys throughout the region. This makes Tanzania one of the most geologically dynamic places on Earth, where, honestly, landscape changes are visible within human lifetimes. Local communities living along the Rift Valley experience regular earthquakes, ground cracks that split roads and buildings, and the emergence of hot springs and geysers as the Earth's crust stretches and breaks under continental stress. The splitting process will eventually create some of the world's deepest lakes and most dramatic mountain ranges as the land adjusts to the separation forces, making future Tanzania a completely different geographical entity than exists today. This continental breakup represents one of the most significant geological events occurring on modern Earth, allowing scientists to observe continental drift and ocean formation processes that typically take hundreds of millions of years to complete. So we've just discovered Tanzania's most incredible secrets, from blood-drinking warriors to a continent literally splitting in half. Which one shocked you the most? Have you ever experienced anything this wild? Subscribe for more mind-blowing facts that'll change how you see our world.